Hi, I'm Lauren Holmes, and today I'm going to be talking about M. bovis, also known as Moraxella bovis, in cattle operations. M. bovis is known to be the leading pathogen that causes infectious bovine keratoconjunctivitis, which is also known as pink eye in a cattle operation. The most common pathogen that's linked to pink eye is, of course, M. bovis. It is spread by contact through animals. It can also be spread through humans to the other animals. So if you're handling the cow and then you turn around and handle another cow without washing your hands between or without changing gloves between, then you've become the vector for those and you can spread it to the next animal. It is extremely contagious, which means that if you do touch one cow with it and then move to the next, it's likely that the new cow that you're touching will also get the infection. Other pathogens that are known to be linked with this disease are Moraxella bovis, which we aren't exactly certain if it's actually related. It has been isolated in some animals, but we usually find M. bovis at the same time that we're finding M. ovis, so we're not sure if it's directly related or if it's also there causing another infection. Moraxella bovaculi is another strain that we've recently started to isolate in cattle with pink eye. This one has been found more than the M. ovis has been and can cause other problems in addition to the pink eye. There are many methods for preventing the spread of this disease. The first would be hygiene. So like I mentioned before, washing your hands when you're handling one cow and then moving to the next. Anytime you're dealing with any animals, you should definitely wash your hands between each and wear gloves. Gloves are a really great way to cut down on the infections. So by wearing gloves, you can protect your hands and the other animals. The key to that would be change your gloves between animals, which sounds simple, but a lot of people don't think to do that. So if you're handling one animal, make sure you're changing your gloves before you move to the next. There is a vaccination out on the market that can help you prevent M. bovis from being spread between your cows. The cows do have to be vaccinated prior to the infection, of course. So it is a preventative method, not a treatment option. You can get these from any veterinarian. Some cattle feed stores even sell them over the counter, much like your other vaccines that you would give. You do have to vaccinate all the animals in the herd to be able to prevent that. It's a great way to keep it from becoming a big problem. Isolation protocols are also a great way to prevent it from spreading. Usually isolation is going to be your resort once the animal already has it. You're going to put them in an isolation stall or isolation pen to keep other animals from being in contact with them and getting the infection. By keeping them separate, of course, we know it's highly contagious. You're going to minimize the risk of exposure to the other animals. So that's a great way to also cut down on the spread of the infection. Treatment options if your herd is infected. So utilizing the isolation protocols like I discussed before, putting your animal in the isolation stalls or pens is going to be one way to prevent it from going to other animals. It's also going to prevent that animal from being reinfected. So if you don't catch it soon enough and another animal gets it, they can't reinfect the animal that has already had it previously because they are isolated. The big downfall to that is sometimes they won't build the immunity to it like we want them to. So that kind of hinders us from being able to prevent it further. Antibiotics are another treatment option that we often utilize. A lot of people try to stray away from antibiotics just due to the negative connotation that many consumers have brought about in relation to that. The antibiotics that are used to treat these infections are often antibiotics that aren't used in humans. A big argument that's been used with the antibiotic argument is that it'll cause human resistance when we become ill if we're eating the antibiotics in the meat. Fortunately, there are protocols in place, as we all know, to prevent that from happening. One of those is that the M. bovis is treated with an antibiotic which is in the tetracycline family, which most humans don't ever use. So even if we did build a resistance to it, it's not going to be a huge deal to us because we don't necessarily need to be using it. Another thing that they have in place is a withdrawal period. So that means that the animal would have to be withdrawn from the antibiotic, so they would not be able to be sold for slaughter, or their milk would not be able to be sold for so many days after the antibiotic was given. This is going to prevent any antibiotic residue from being sold in the meat or the milk of the cow. Culling is another treatment option. It's not necessarily a treatment for the animal, but it is a treatment for the herd. So if one animal becomes infected and the rest of the animals are still healthy, it's one way to prevent your herd from having an outbreak by culling that animal either to slaughter or to another herd. Some big effects on the herd that we often see from M. bovis. It's costly to the producer, and as we know, anything that's costly to the producer is also costly to the consumer. The more money the producer puts into raising that cow for us to consume, the more we're going to have to pay for it. So by saving the producer money, we're saving ourselves money. We need to be educating the producers on how to prevent and treat this effectively if it does become a problem in their herd. It can cause increased time on the operation if they're being treated with antibiotics, because like I talked about previously, withdrawal periods have to be followed before they're able to be slaughtered or their milk's able to be sold. So if they're not able to go to slaughter and we have to continue feeding them, it's going to be costly to our producer, in turn costly to us. Milk dump is another costly effect on the herd. So none of the milk would be able to be sold if they're on antibiotics. We would have to milk that cow, keep it separate, and then dump that milk so that no consumers could actually consume it. It can cause an outbreak, which would be, again, costly on the consumer and the herd. So if we're not taking proper precautions and washing our hands, changing our gloves, making sure that everybody's vaccinated, it can cause an outbreak in the herd, and then all of those animals have to be treated. It can potentially lead to loss of vision and blindness. These aren't usually big problems in animals that are solely used to produce, like dairy animals that are just making milk, and beef cattle, which are just used for their meat once they're grown. But if it were a show animal, then that could be costly to the person who's trying to show it. It's not ideal for the animal to be blind, of course, but if it's just being used for production purposes, then usually it's not something that's going to have a great impact on their life. Important things to remember about M. bovis. So just like with any infection, culturing the bacteria in the infection is going to help us create a more effective plan for treatment. So if we know exactly what we're dealing with, whether it be M. bovis, M. ovis, or M. bovaculi, we're going to be able to create a better treatment plan that's tailored to that animal and the infection that we're treating. So it's going to save us money and time by being able to isolate which bacteria we're trying to battle for that animal, and then we're going to be able to use the proper antibiotics and the proper isolation protocols to be able to get that animal healthy again. Prevention is always more cost effective than it is to treat an animal. That's true with most diseases in animals. So by using that vaccine, which costs a few dollars per head for the herd, we're going to be able to cut down on the cost of treatment, which is several dollars per head for the herd, which is going to save the producer money and time. We know that healthy cows produce better products. So anytime the cow is less stressed, it's going to give us a better product to be able to sell to consumers. So we're going to be able to turn around and sell that product for more, which is going to make back the money that we're going to be using for vaccines and the gloves that we're going to use and any products that we have to use to keep that animal healthy. So that's really important, is to keep your cow healthy and happy. These are references. These are different websites and different articles that I found about M. bovis. If you're interested in learning more, these are really great resources. They are scholarly articles, so you can read more about the treatment, the diagnosis, anything that you want to know you can find in these articles. Please feel free to ask me any questions, and have a good night.